start my timer so I don't lose track of this. So I do that sometimes. I'm Mark. I'm an addict.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark.
I'm very glad to be here. Pretty much glad to be anywhere. To let you know where I'm coming from and where I've been. I celebrated my 41st anniversary on the 18th of February this past year. And I mean, I never expected to live to see 30. And most of the guys I ran with did. Out of the old original crew of guys that I ran with, only one of them is still alive besides me. And the only reason Gibby's alive, he did like 20 some years on a life bit and got paroled. I don't know what he's doing now. Our running partner, you know, my half buddy or whatever, he died in the joint doing a life bit for being a career criminal, you know, which is how I got to Narcotics Anonymous, by being a career criminal. I got clean and detox in Cleveland, Ohio. I grew up in Akron, Ohio. If anybody's familiar with the Fellowship Alcoholics Anonymous, that's where it started in Akron. So it's kind of like, you know, I guess it was proper for me to be in the right place at the right time. When I first got clean in Ohio, there were no Narcotics Anonymous meetings in Ohio. And I went to that other fellowship and tried to fit in and got a lot of flack for being an addict and alcoholic. You know, I was one of them, you know. And I was like 26 years old. You know, I was younger than these guys. These guys are like my age now then, you know. So I never felt like I was supposed to be there, but deep down inside, I knew I had to be somewhere, and this seemed to be the best place to be. I had a sponsor who was an old gangster too, and he challenged me. You know, you really want to piss those guys off? Stick around. You know, really get on their nerves. So I learned about keep coming back early on in a kind of roundabout way. He also bet me I couldn't do 2 weeks in that drunk ward, and I won the bet because he died in 05, you know, in recovery. But what happened to me was in October of '79, I went down here to Georgia, and I had been involved with this woman in Ohio. She was a millionaire's daughter, and I was trying to get legitimate and marry her, you know, look for an easy ride again, you know. And I went to this AA meeting, and this guy told me that, you know, I mentioned I was from Akron, Ohio, and I was an addict and alcoholic, you know, as we did back then. And this old guy rolls up on me and he says, "I heard you say he was an addict." I said, "Yeah." He says, "You ever heard of Narcotics Anonymous?" And I had. And getting to the topic that I'm speaking on about literature in recovery, I remember reading a booklet that AA had called Problems Other Than Alcohol. And I remember reading it, and it mentioned Narcotics Anonymous. The print looked a little darker to me, I think, you know, because it impressed me. And I kept asking these old guys, these old AA guys, you know, guys who had been around for, you know, a long time, but what's about this Narcotics Anonymous? And none of them could answer the question. None of them knew. You know, and there was no internet, you know, no instant knowledge. The library didn't have anything in it. You know, I was a well-read guy. I'd been to college. I'd been in the military. I traveled. I was a well-rounded, knock-around kind of guy. But nobody knew nothing that could help me, you know, but this little booklet. It's now a pamphlet. They kind of edited it down. I check every now and then. You know? And he gets up to me, this old guy, and he writes down a couple of numbers on a card. He hands me a card. He says, "Here, you call them people. They don't handle people like you." And, you know, I spent these several months of being one of them, you know, and I really wanted to be one of us. So I called the number. I got back to Lulu's place, and I called the number. You know, she was working her gig. You know, I was down there on vacation. I could go on vacation when I wanted at that point in time in life. And I called the hotline number. They call them hotlines back then. Nobody called me right back like they were supposed to. I was pissed. So I called the other number. And it was this fella named Bo, and he says, "I never met anybody from Akron. Why don't you stop by my place of business so I can meet you and, you know, give you some information?" Because I asked him about this Narcotics Anonymous thing. And I went down there, and I read some literature, and I got a meeting scheduled, and I talked for a few hours with him, and I went to my first NA meeting that night. And it was a room full of people, and they were all addicts, you know. And some were addicts and alcoholics. You know, it was, we still hadn't gotten some of this stuff figured out yet, you know. But there was this little white book and these 6 pamphlets. That's what we had. We had that. We had each other. So I grabbed up a bunch of stuff and I took it back to Akron. I went to a number of meetings the rest of the week, you know, and I was stealing literature. To use a term that seems to be bandied around lately. But I took that stuff back to Ohio, and I was sponsoring this guy. He's a retired cocaine dealer because he was retired because he still had a house and a car. And Gary reads it and he goes, "We got to start one of these meetings, man." I said, "Okay, let's get a room." So we got a room. We started a meeting. And within a few weeks, we were like over, you know, we had to move out of that room. We had to get a bigger place, you know. And a guy came down one night, and he was like the oldest junkie I ever saw, and he walks in the room, and he stops in the middle of the room, and he goes, "Is this it?" Yeah, I said, "Hey, man, have a seat. Glad you're here." He started another meeting in Cleveland. I found out about some other meetings in Ohio I hadn't been aware of, you know. And when we had 7 meetings in the northeastern part of the state, you know, Cleveland, Akron, Youngstown, Canton, Kent, or Warren, I went to an NA meeting every night. I drive like 50 miles. Didn't even just drive and shit, you know. I drag a bunch of other, you know, junkies that I met in AA meetings with me. One of those guys is still clean today. Out of all the guys that went in. That meeting we started on Monday night in Akron still meets. Gary passed away in 17 of cancer and strokes. So to me, that literature, the printed word, you know, that I read in that AA booklet, you know, that got my interest peaked about this fellowship, you know, and the direction it took me in, you know. And then when I got there, and I remember this guy coming to a meeting one night, and he said, I said, "What do you think, man?" And it's pretty cool. And the guy goes, "Well, you ain't got no meetings, you ain't got no old timers, and you ain't got no big book." And I said, "Well, if you want meetings, start with it. If you want old timers, start now. If you want a book, help write it." I got involved in literature stuff early on. Newsletters, compiling regional directories, stuff like that. Because when we started out, there were only a couple hundred meetings in the whole world when I got clean. You know, when I found out about the rest of us, you know, and watching meetings grow from a couple here and there to, like, you know, each town having a meeting, you know, a number of meetings a week, you know, was like it's just inspiring, man. You know, more addicts, more people getting clean, more people living this program, more people reading our literature. That little white book and those 6 pamphlets. One of the pamphlets, by the way, decided it wasn't really NA literature. It ended up in the fellowship in Narnath because it really was literature for them. And we started getting involved in this project to compile our book. You know, people thought that somebody in California was going to write it. You know, some guru or something, some wiser being or something was going to write down what we needed to know. I mean, people thought like this. You know, somebody in California will write that, man, and we'll have a big book. It'll be wonderful. You know, and some were saying, "We got a bunch of addicts in recovery now, varying lengths of time, varying experiences. We all felt the same and thought the same, and we had the same ideas and attitudes and emotions inside of us. Our external experience is different, you know, which makes each of us unique, but inside we're the same. You know, underneath the exterior, underneath the ephemeral stuff that we just grab and gather around ourselves is different, but inside we're the same." That empathy that's talked about in that old literature, you know, is true. And that's what drove us. And there was a bunch of us outside of California that decided that maybe we should write the book. And of course, the naysayers were like, committees can't write books. You know, you guys, like, what do you know? You weren't there at the beginning. What do you know about NA? What do you know about recovery? Well, we were living it all over the country. When I first started getting involved in service in NA, we were part of what was called the Western Pennsylvania Area Service Committee. And that went from, it was kind of based outside of Pittsburgh, Malacopa. And it was like the western hunk of Pennsylvania and all of Ohio and the lower part of Michigan, the western end of New York, and West Virginia and Indiana and Kentucky. And eventually that's now a bunch of regions. We realized that the logistics of that weren't working. We had to look local. We started area services and regional services. And in doing that, we compiled a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge collected from all of us. And everybody had different experiences with that. Some guys were like executives with big corporations that were members. We had guys like me that were, union guys and gangsters that knew a few things, And we had people who were just climbing up out of the fucking dirt because they had nothing else but this recovery program and nothing, their own ass. They were literally saving their own ass. And all that came together, When, as we were working on the text, and in the process of my own story, I was still involved with my criminal activities. And I got arrested. And I went to prison for about a year. My attorneys couldn't keep me out. They couldn't get me out quick enough. Anyways, while I was in there, the literature movement had been going on. And they sent me a rough draft, a grade form book, as some know it, the precursor to our basic text. Kind of like the working draft in literary terms. And they sent me that while I was sitting in prison in Ohio, and I got to read it a bunch of times and write some stuff and some input and, get involved in that. And I got out in time to go to a lit conference in Ohio, where about half of the text got compiled and a bunch of the pamphlets. And we wrote that. There was a bunch of addicts. It was like this floating circus of about, anywhere from, 20 to 50 people, all addicts seeking recovery, all wanting to carry our message in a printed word. So we could reach out, not just to all those cities in the middle of America that hadn't heard about us yet, and places where there, there's dope fiends everywhere, but all over the world. And that was our focus, and that was, our calling, I guess, our mission, our service commitment to ourselves and to the addicts yet to come. I remember getting, and the book wasn't done, so we're going to do some more work on it after the World Convention in Miami in '81. And I remember asking my parole officer if I could go to the convention and then stay for a lit conference for like a week or so, however long it took to finish it. And he says, sure. He writes me up this little slip, my get out of Ohio slip, And I'm telling him, so do I have to check in with anybody down there or notify you or any, like when I have paperwork I got to cover my ass with now, He says, oh no. He says, you fuck up, it'll be on the front page of the newspaper again. Real confidence builder, But I went down there. I couldn't get a job anymore because I was, a violent criminal and all that. But some people helped me get down there. And we worked on the text, and we got the other half of it done. And we finished up some pamphlets. And they wanted to move on to the stories part of the book, personal stories, which I had no real interest in. And, I remember me and a couple other members of the committee were like swimming in the ocean. It was a full moon, it was a solstice or something, equinox or whatever. And we're chanting to the moon. Why, I don't know. Or standing in the surf off of, outside of Miami, that we want our book, when the book got printed and made available, and it was, like a great thing, I mean, we were finally like, I guess, legitimate, Whereas up to that point, we were just those guys, the other fellowship. Oh, you guys, the guys that didn't have no book, and the old timers and the meetings. So now we had meetings all over the fucking world, and we had books, and we had people that had been clean for more than, a few months. We had some people a few years. There's some guys that had decades and shit. I was at the World Convention in '85 in DC, and I watched the Clean Time Countdown, and there was more people that got clean after the book was available than before. That inspired me. I knew then that we were going to be all right. And there were people from other parts of the world there too at that convention. I met a few of them, and they were all on fire about this, And that period, like from the mid '80s up until the late '80s, early '90s, was a period of really intense growth in our fellowship because of the literature in the book. I mean, now you could hand somebody something and they could read it. You didn't have to be there with them. You could send it to somebody on the other side of the planet, and you didn't have to be there with them. But your message, our message, was in that book. One of the things we agonized about when we were writing the book was, would it be censored? Because it was kind of raw. It was real. We wrote it to be simple so everybody could understand it. You didn't have to have some sort of college educational intellect and vocabulary to read that book. It's very simple, But we had that one line about you can't save your face to save your ass at the same time. We were worried that some old bitty librarian would they say ass, you can't have it. And there'd be some poor schmuck addict, some homeless guy sitting in some library getting his feet warm and sees this book, Narcotics Anonymous, and pulls it out and reads it. And say, damn. Because just like me, when we read those words, we know them in our heart already. Shit went on in lit conferences we talk about. Just like that printed word is so important. And, now you can just type something out. I can type something on my phone, and it goes across the world. And somebody can read it and say, "That's crazy, Mark," or "That's wonderful." And the beauty of that is that we're all connected. We were all connected before in like a kind of spiritual, ethereal kind of way. Now we're directly connected through our words, our literature. Our book is the same here as it is everywhere, pretty much. There's some variances because of language differences. Some languages don't have words to describe some of the things that we have words for. So we improvise, we figure it out. The people locally can do that. I don't think that some sort of central clearinghouse for translations is, probably the right way to go about it. I think the local dialect is much better. When I learned Spanish, I found out that there's a bunch of different dialects of Spanish, and things that I would say to some Cuban guy would get me in a fight with some Colombian guy, and the Cuban guy would laugh about it, I've been busy learning other languages just because I like that. It appeals to me, and not so much to make myself feel better about me knowing more stuff, but so I can communicate better with other people. My experience with this book is, and with our literature overall, is that it's effective. The people read that and they understand it. It's something you can carry away. That little white book, we used to call it the hip pocket program because it fit right in the back pocket of a pair of Levi's. Perfect. And And it's like that essence of our recovery. It's real short and concise, easy to read, easy, like you can whip it out and you read a whole thing in a few minutes if you're relatively good, Even if you're slow, it doesn't take you that long, It takes you a lot less time to read that little white booklet than it does sitting in some coffee shop waiting for the guy to come back with the package, Sometimes they never come back with a package, especially if you're ever dealt with me or any of my boys. I learned that our connection through that literature has been vital. Watching the growth of the fellowship is evidence of that. Now I'm a big fan of like giving people literature, man. I keep a bunch of stuff in my car, and I go to a meeting, and there'll be some newcomer there. Invariably, there's always a newcomer at a meeting. Just very rarely you go to a meeting, everybody's been there forever. There's always that guy who picks up the white tip, And I always ask them after the meeting, do you have a text? If they say no, or I can't afford one, or we used to tell people to steal it. Hey, just steal it from me. That's what it's there for. It's for yours. We wrote it for you. Might as well take it. And now I can just say, come here. You give them. It's an obligation that we have to the addict that still suffers to carry that message. We can carry that message very effectively with printed word. There's pamphlets. I tell guys I sponsor, take that 10-step pamphlet, live in the program. It's got the questions in it, And you do that. You fill the questions out, and after you figure out you don't have to keep getting the pamphlet, you can write them on separate pieces of paper. Use the pamphlet for a guide. It took me a few months to figure that out. And after I collected a bunch of those, I had an inventory written, another inventory. I'm like, damn, this stuff, amazing. Who thought of that? We did. It's us. My experience with that, with our text, people. They read that and they scour it, and they memorize it and all that, and they can tell you like what's on what page and all that. I'm like, cool, but and knowing what the black part—that's the important part in that book. The black part of it, and how it affects the gray part up here between our ears. What gets filtered through, what sticks, what works, what means something, And that's why we wrote it. So we could carry that message, so we could tell somebody without being standing in front of them that this works. This is how we did it. This is my life. This is our life. This is us in those words. A friend of mine just told me about this project they've got where people, that have been around for a while to write their experiences, and I was sharing a couple of mine with him, and he's like, you should write it down, man. And my wife has been telling me, you should write this stuff down. And I'm like, who would want to read it? It's just ramblings of some old fucking criminal, What good am I, It says, you lived. And I've had all these, I've had the legal problems, and I've had a divorce and business problem, all that stuff that happens in life, I just had like 4 surgeries in less than a year, but I can see out of my eye now. I'm like, it paid off. I didn't have any fear of that. I've lived through all these things, and I tell people, like, I stayed alive long enough to get clean, and I stayed clean long enough to get a life. And I live that life today. I've got children, and I've got a wife. I'm retired. I don't have to do anything except what my wife tells me to. And I do that because I'm able to share myself with somebody now. I look at addiction as being this very selfish disease. It's so self-centered that ultimately we kill ourselves because we can't stand anybody else involved with us, man, around us. And our literature and our very recovery demands that we rely on other people to help us. The book tells you that steps take you through that, from being that frightened, angry, lonely, individual, powerless, life's unmanageable, you know. You're usually institutionalized. I've already been in 2 nut houses. They lock you up for acting crazy, not for being crazy, I've been in jail a bunch of times, And now the 12th step tells me that I practice these principles in all my affairs, I can live this out in the real world. I've got friends all over the world in different aspects of life, different things I'm interested in, not so much recovery, and they don't know, they may or may not know I'm a recovering addict, and I don't care. I don't stand on that as, like, I'm a recovered addict. I'm some kind of hero. I beat it, No, it beats me all the time. There's nothing in there that says, oh yeah, after a certain amount of time, you're no longer an addict, or your addiction don't really mean nothing, or it isn't as effective, or it isn't as the influence on your life that it once was. Addiction touches all aspects of our lives, man. Everything. Even to this day, there's things I think about, thoughts come in my head, and it's pure dope fiend moves, man, in my brain. And I'm like, damn, I stop and I go, I've got the ability now, after a number of years of recovery, that I recognize this for what it is. And I don't buy the package. I don't say, gee, that sounds like a great idea. Sometimes I have to fall back on it. Both my attorneys are dead. I got no more fucking firewall between me and all the shit that I've been through, because they really helped me. One attorney died in a hospice as a direct result of this disease. My other attorney died clean of a heart attack working in his garden in the suburbs in Ohio, right? I was privileged to be able to give him a 22-year medallion one time I was in Ohio visiting. I just happened to be at a meeting and he happened to be at. I didn't realize he was in recovery. I had lost track of him over the years. I left Ohio when I got parole, lived in D.C. for about 10 years. I left there when I got my rotten divorce and moved to Florida for about 10 years. And I left and went up to Western Maryland for a couple of years, took care of my second oldest kid. And then I moved out to Colorado in 2008. I've been out there like 12 years. I've been, I got 2 little kids and a wife that's much younger than me. I'm living the dream, man. I'm retired, and I'm still clean through all that, And people still like me. Even my friends that aren't addicts, they respect me for who I am, And I always wanted that. I always wanted to be able to stand on my own. And I learned that from you people, and we wrote that down in our text about how it is to, miracles happen. Each day a new beginning, There's things in there about the aspirations we have when we get here, the dreams that we have that become reality. We wrote about that. That's our collective experience as a fellowship, each and every one of us. Even the people who weren't there to write the book, who never got there until, 30, 40 years later. It's your experience too. It's all of us. That doesn't change. The only thing that changes is the face of the fellowship, really. Now there's meetings every place I ever got loaded at, anywhere in the world I've been. Europe, Canada, U.S. There's meetings. I guess that worked out pretty good for me if I go revisit those places. But it also offers the opportunity for people there to do that, to live and prosper and grow, recover. That printed word is so. It's so vital that now there's a lot of people that want to say that only this literature is what is valid. The stuff we wrote back then didn't change. It's not extinct. It's not wrong. It's not illegal. It's not improper. It's the reality of what we wrote. It's the reality of our experience as a fellowship. And give those books away, man. Make sure people have them. Make sure everybody new in that meeting has one. Everybody old in that meeting has one. If you have one you haven't read in a while, pick it up. Just open it up. Throw whatever page you open up to and read. I guarantee you'll find something you need to hear that day, something you need to read, something you need to know that day, something to remind you who you are, what you are, why you're here. Any page, any pamphlet. It happens to me. You know, sometimes the print's a little darker on some of that stuff too for me, you know? And I'm glad of that. Might be the God of my understanding me more than I understand yet. You know? I'm glad for that, man. That amazes me. I would like to say that, you know, I'm very grateful that I was able to come down and share with the fellowship. You know, I guess they're blasting us all over the planet. You know, so if you knew me anywhere else, hey, you know, if I did something wrong, hey, yeah, we're all human, man. We're addicts. That's my blanket amendment. Actually, I remember making amends to people in my family, you know, and my mother and I never had a really good relationship. She went to her grave pissed off at me, you know, and I did all the things that I needed to do. You know, I took care of my side. And early on in my recovery, I tried to make amends and expect something in return, you know. And when I didn't get that, I'd be pissed, you know. Well, they didn't, you know, she didn't, you know. And I got sat down pretty hard with, it isn't what they do, it's what you do. You know, if you feel you've done what you had to do, you did what you're supposed to do. You know, my best efforts, you know. And my best efforts don't have to make everybody happy. You know, my best efforts don't have to fit into what they want. My best efforts have to come in to what is best for me. You know, I needed to make those amends. I needed to make those differences to those people. You know, and today I try not to screw up. You know, I try not to have to make amends. You know, practice these principles in all my affairs covers a lot of turf, man. I learned that here, and that's what we wrote. We wrote about the experience of being an addict in recovery. You know, because we all know what we did to get here. You know, I never met the guy who woke up one morning and said, "I'm going to go to meetings and quit using the rules. Going to be wonderful." I haven't met that person. If you're here, I'd love to talk to you about it. You know? Everybody I met has been like dragging in here for whatever reason. They wanted to get out of jail, or they wanted to go, you know, save their marriage or their job, or whatever, get their kids back, or whatever it is. And they get here and they realize, hopefully, that somewhere along the line, all that stuff is really secondary. What's really important is for them to recover, to get what we know and learn from it and use it and get better. And all that other stuff happens. You know, if I want to limit myself to that stuff, I'll get that. But what about me? What about my life? What about my spot in the planet, man? You know, what am I doing for me? How am I fitting in? Am I practicing these principles? Am I still powerless, unmanageable? You know, my life still being managed by something outside of me, you know, rather than me making decisions and moving forward through my life. And that's what I learned in this literature. That's what that process is all about. And that's what's written down in our stuff. You know? So make books available, any means possible, any means necessary. You know, print them. You know, we used to do that with pamphlets. We didn't have them. We were too broke to buy them. You know. So today we do that for the people that are here, the people to come. Because all the people that have gone before us, that's the legacy they leave us, man. And I'm so glad that I've been privileged to be a part of that and to be a part of this fellowship. I'm glad to say I'm not one of them anymore. I'm one of us. And I thank you.